Hello, I'm David Kerr, Professor of Cancer Medicine at the University of Oxford, and I'd be really interested in your comments on a tit-for-tat argument that's going on just now between the FDA, other commentators, and its Chinese regulatory equivalent. This all circles around a recent application for a BLA from a company who were marketing an immune checkpoint inhibitor called sintilimab. They'd done a trial in non-small cell lung cancer, comparing their drug versus chemotherapy. The trial came out as being positive, but the trial was done completely within China, and the regulatory package was put forward to the FDA, but it was turned down. There are a number of different grounds, something around endpoints, something around standard of care, something around insufficient pharmacokinetic data, something around competitiveness. Do we need any more immune checkpoint inhibitors, given the relatively large number which have been approved already? But perhaps the most telling point was that the study was conducted only in Chinese patients. And there was an interesting discussion, to and fro, we would say tit for tat, between US, Chinese key opinion leaders and the regulatory authorities. And it does represent a really interesting challenge because clearly, up until relatively recent times, China was the recipient of innovative Western medicines, and the Chinese authorities, depending on the drug, the size of the benefit and so on, might require a bridging study, they might require some form of crossover. Rarely, if they felt that the disease was etiologically different in China, they may require a separate additional randomized trial to demonstrate the real benefits. That was the case with a drug that was marketed for treatment of hepatocellular cancer, which one could argue is manifestly different in East Asia than it is in the West. Anyway, in these days of globalization, we're used to multi-center trials in which often big pharma run trials in which we recruit patients from around the world and then do some subgroup analyses to see if the hazard ratios are the same and are independent of ethnicity. And if not, of course, that can generate some really interesting hypotheses, as was the case in terms of EGF inhibitors for the treatment of lung cancer, that spawned a whole fantastic story looking at EGF mutants, which were responsive to these drugs and which were more common in Eastern Asian populations. So back to the immune checkpoint inhibitor, there are no data that I know of that suggest that there are any major differences in ethnic handling of these drugs in terms of their pharmacokinetics. Response rates when drugs have moved from west to east seem very, very similar indeed. The distribution, the kinetics of handling of antibodies is relatively straightforward and doesn't seem to be varying in terms of ethnicity. So there's a very interesting debate to be had about it, because clearly there are now more innovative medicines in the pipeline from China, which is fantastic. Building on some of the truly innovative science that's coming from there, I think we'll see more drugs coming from east to west. And clearly we need to consider very carefully what trial data that we require. And would we take a predominantly Chinese study and then look at a small pharmacokinetic study or a crossover study and a relatively small population of Caucasian patients, depending again on the etiology of the disease, or would we require additional randomized trials to be undertaken in a Caucasian population for a Chinese medicine coming over? Now, I think that we need the regulatory authorities to get together. As a community of oncologists, we are very happy to collaborate. We're very happy to have trials which draw patients, participants from around the world, and in sufficient number for us to look for subtle but sometimes important differences in patterns of toxicity, response rates, and so on. So having globalized cancer trials may well be the answer. But I think we need to see a greater degree of consistency coming in from the regulatory authorities around the world. as to what sort of information we really require, and to be consistent above all else. If we have a set of rules, to apply these consistently across any of the new drugs that are coming in. Have a look at the publications in Lancet Oncology. See what you think of it. Are we being fair? Is there an ethnic bias creeping in? Is it scientifically sound? See what you think. I'd be awfully interested in your viewpoint. For the time being, Netscapers, thanks as always for listening. Over and out, and ahoy. Thank you.